Welcome, second grade. I'm happy to have you here on your second grade curriculum preview for the second 6 weeks. One of the things you'll want to start with is we now have Unit 2, Maps and Globes. Now, one of the places I want to show you that I've added to is this thing right here. This is called a suggested pacing guide for Unit 2, Maps and Globes. Like I say, it's suggested, but I want to show you where that is. If you go under your unit documents and go into your unit overview, you will see that right underneath. So that is something you'll want to go to. Let's look and see how we're pacing this one out. The suggested way is to start with interpreting information on maps and globes, basic pieces of maps and globes, title, orientation. Remember, you're only looking at north, south, east, west, and a legend and map keys. And look at this verb. It is for you to interpret. Then after you do that, because you're taking that big idea of interpreting maps, and then you're going to create maps. Once you know how to interpret them, then you can create them. And you'll want to show places and routes within the homeschooling community. Then you need to identify major landforms. Now look at it. It's even specific on which ones, including. Including means you have to do these ones. Each of the continents, each of the oceans on maps and globes. Remember, every time in social studies they use the word including, it means that is something that you are expected to hit. If it uses the word such as, they're giving you more leeway. And then you're going to take, after you do that, locate places of significance in our local community. And it'll say including, so these are important, Texas, the state capital, the U.S. capital, major cities in Texas, the coast, the United States on maps and globes. So let's go into that and kind of see what each item looks like. Here I have for you that you have to give or provide the meaning of, or you're interpreting it, so information. And I've actually given you pages in your social studies textbook that will help you and that you can look at. There are some good resources in your social studies textbook. And so any place that I found a map that you already have access to, I have included that. So that's right now what I have for you. Now remember, on these sample assessment questions, feel free to use them. If you want to create a unit test based on these, that is fantastic, and add to it. Please feel free to do that. In addition to that, I've given you a lesson plan here, and this is really cute, and I'm going to show it to you real quick. I have it, if you click on this, you're going to get a YouTube video about how to read a map. Let's watch. I know you would love to watch that, but you'll see this is kind of a basic video that I've given you that might be able to help you out too. Then when you go to create maps, I have on here that they should be able to create a map of their classroom, and I talked about all the pieces that are also up in here that they would want to add about those basic elements. And I have several activities for you here that I have posted if you're interested. Now remember, you do not have to do these, but you can if you want to. This is a city map reading activity that is something that is available for you. And it talks, here's a picture of a map, and it talks about how to color the map, and it has questions here for you to do. So I have that as one activity I have for you. In addition to that, I have making a map of the Jolly, it says Jolly Postman. And these are all things that were on CCO last year, so I've just moved them over so that you have them. This talks about understanding and making maps. It even gives you a United Streaming. It talks about there might be a United Streaming video that you might want to look at. The book is called The Jolly Postman, or Other People's Letters. And basically, you distribute a copy of the city map activity to each student, which is what we just talked about. They read that book, and they discuss it as a class, and the groups share their maps. So all this goes together. All this is placed here so that you'll be able to look at that. And here's a rubric of the map. So this is all one big activity, so you can decide if that's something you're interested in. Then in this one, this is identify major landforms, and I have on here exploring the world through children's literature is another attachment that I've included for you. So we'll open that up and show you what that looks like. It has on here You all might remember this. It talks about how you read the poem Magic Carpet by Shel Silverstein, and you pass out motivation sheets and have the students write where they would go and why. And you really talk to them about working with a partner to list the continents and the names of the continents. So this is a great thing for talking about where places are in the world. And it has several activities with it, but it's something that you can really hit this with. And of course, then you have locate places. And so I've given you back again your social studies textbook pages that would allow you to be able to hit this TEK. Now, when you go into the Unit 3 landforms, we'll go back to your unit documents. Remember, we have a suggested pacing guide now for Unit 3 landforms. Now, you might look at this and go, but April, all these are grouped together. Let me explain to you why that is the case. These cannot be separated. You're talking about landforms, and within landforms, you're talking about major landforms and bodies of water, creating all the places and the various sources for the regions. This really all goes with regions. This is going to be a little bit different than what you did up here. Up here, you're just talking about basic maps, and now you're talking about places and regions and what the landforms are with the regions and places of significance within the regions. So all of those go together, which is why I've put those for about 5 days, but you're going to really want to look at some of those region pieces as you're going through them. And in here, look, you have a landforms PowerPoint that we've included for you that might be able to help you out as you're going through. Now remember, these are not things you have to use, but I think they're things that will help you. So on this, it has landforms. It talks about a landform, just a basic review, a mountain, what kind of land that is, a plain, a valley. It has all these good vocabulary words. And if this is something you want to look at several times, feel free to. You're locating places of significance, and I've given you once again another page in your textbook, and then here you have your regions. And what I've given you here, which is interesting, is there is in your social studies textbook, you're supposed to look at several different resources, and there's page numbers in here where each student writes a letter, and one of the students lives in Hawaii and one lives in Arizona, and that would be a great spot to do kind of talk about places and regions and various sources around there. So I just want to give that to you. If you have some better stuff, feel free to use that, but this should help you out with the landforms. Now we're looking at the living in, modifying, and conserving our physical environment. And let me show you what we have for this. I've grouped them again in your unit overview in a suggested pacing guide. On that pacing guide, I am going to explain to you why I have put in what I have. 2.7c and 2.7d I have put together. The reason why I have that is, look down here. Explain how people depend on the physical environment and natural resources to meet basic needs, and identify the characteristics of different communities. So first we want to talk about how they depend on your physical environment to meet your needs. But in conjunction with that, you have to talk about how needs might be different depending on where you live, which goes into urban, suburban, and rural. There are not going to be the same needs and the things that people and natural resources depending on where you live. And so I've grouped that in together. Then you're going to go back up to 2.7a, and you're going to describe how weather patterns and seasonal patterns might affect that. Now look what I've combined it with. As you're talking about weather, you're going to hit the major landforms in the bodies of water, because that's going to influence the type of weather you may have, and about the places from the various regions. That's going to influence your weather, because you're basically trying to make sure that you see how this weather might affect where you live or what you can do and what type of activities you can participate in. For example, if I lived in Alaska, NRH2O isn't going to be open maybe as long as it will in Texas. You know, those are the types of things we're trying to get them to talk about, how the weather, how your climate affects this. And with this, you're going to talk about these other areas, these other texts. Now on 2.7b, you're going to talk about natural resources. Once you understand that weather affects it, then you can talk about natural resources and natural hazards that affect that. And then you're going to combine that with, again, the landforms and major continents and oceans and places, because you're going to talk about, depending on where you live, might change it. If you're going to look at a natural disaster, California is going to have earthquakes because they are with a fault line. You're not going to see that. Well, you might see it now a couple times in Texas, but normally you don't see it as much. In Texas, you're going to see tornadoes. That's important to go over. And then I have finalized up with 2.4a, b, and what they're combining with. And if you look up here to 2.4a and b, now you're talking about historical figures that have looked at conserving the environment, and you're going to look at that with using chronology and using the words, vocabulary, past, present, and future, because you're going to talk about people in your past, your present, and your future. And you're going to look at maybe different sources, electronic sources, biographies, and you're going to look at maybe some photographs, some journals, some interviews. So I've kind of grouped them in a way that I think makes sense. I hope this helps you out. Would love your feedback on this. I want to show you each one of these teaks so that you see them. We're going to start with that 2.7 C and D. I have included in here for you several different activities that you can do. Here's one called Introducing Natural Resources. If you click on this one, you will see that this goes over, once again, a United streaming video learning about natural resources, and you have them choose something and write about it. So that's something that you can do. There's a natural resources rubric. There's everything comes from something. This I found online, and I think this one's something that's new that we didn't have there in the past. So you might be interested in this. When you look at this, it talks about how everything comes from something, and it talks, it's K through 2, so you might have to change it to look at some things, but feel free. It says 2 hours. Obviously, you're not going to do that in a day. Please know we understand that. But, if you also can connect it to some language arts, you might see if you can do that. And you have a wall map, and what you talk about is you define resources for your students, and you talk about how everything has to come from something. And then you talk about putting things into examples like paper comes from trees. And you talk about where things are. And there's an activity here that's called a Quest for Gold. And I love this. This is from the National Geographic Education. So I think that's also very helpful to you as you're moving through. Now, so feel free to use those. You do not have to, but it might help you out. And I think that'll be something you'll want to look at. On the urban, rural, you want to make sure that they use the vocabulary and can tell the different characteristics. So I wrote in my assessment question, where would you most likely to have a farm? That would obviously be a rural community. So that's something that you'll want to go over with them. When you're going into your next area, after you finish that group, you'll go, oh, I got that one, 2.7a, weather patterns are here. You'll want to talk about, for example, and I have that example about the NRH2O. Now, when you're talking about physical ways that people have modified the environment, here I have something for identify the positive and negative consequences of human modification. I put on here, we're building windmills in West Texas to provide energy for people who live in cities. Would this be positive or negative? You can talk about the things that are actually going on in our current environment. And here I have a lesson on ways people can conserve and replenish natural resources, and I have a Lorax lesson. And we all love the Lorax, and so it talks about reading the book of the Lorax, and the basic overview of the Lorax, and how you can't use everything up all at once. So that's a way to also bring literature into social studies. I hope this helps. I know y'all are going to have a terrific second 6 weeks. Thank you for all your hard work in Eduphoria. I know y'all are working very, very hard. We appreciate it. If we can be of any help at all, please let any of the coordinators know. Let me know. I'm more than happy to point you in any direction I can. Have a great second 6 weeks.